Okay, and you're live.
We're live. Welcome back to the Better World podcast. We are doing chapters 100 to 108 today. So this is the second to last or penultimate episode of this podcast. My name is Carolyn Leonard, and I am the assistant producer on the project. And I am joined by Becca.
I'm Becca. I play Rowan.
And I'm Kelly, and I play Evangeline.
Great. And I am drinking a blood orange soda, which is blood orange. You glad I didn't cry too much during this chapter set? Too much. You guys drinking anything on theme?
I have with me what I call the Tears of Parison, also known as water.
Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to come up with a fun name. Now I just feel sort of left out. I have what's left over of my cranberry raspberry lemonade, so real exciting over here.
The Crock and Witch thing.
Yeah,
cranberries. So we open in chapter 100. We're in Orinth with our pals there. Adian and Lysandra are talking about their little routine of getting ready for battle together, where they eat breakfast. She does mention that they haven't banged yet, which is information we all need. Manon is doing her best to keep living and fighting despite the 13. Ansel and Manon discuss the potentials of sharing the wastes if they live. Manon sort of is thinking about is that do I want that? Do I not? What's up? Manon insists on fighting, even though Petra's like, girl, you might need to chill out. Like, all your friends just died. And our little girl Evangeline is delivering messages to and from everyone again. And Murtaugh, I never know. But
Murtaugh?
I don't know. He decides to be the first lord to actually go down to the front line where all the rest of them have been being kind of bitches and staying back. So he decides to go to try and fight the witch siege tower. And really cute part at the end of the chapter, Evangeline thinks that if she could choose a grandpa, she would want it to be Darrow. So it's super cute. And it's sort of like a recap chapter, I feel like, because in 99 is when everything happened with Aelin and the keys, so we kind of have to get back. But any thoughts? What do you think, Kelly, of your little Evangeline as a little baby?
Well, first off, I have a qualm with one of your points, Carolyn. I'm pretty sure she says she wants Murtaugh to be her grandfather, not Darrow.
Oh, shit.
Oh.
That's
what happens That's what happens when I don't out my skimming.
But, same difference, I think, at this point. But
yeah, you're right. My skimming got the best of me.
Happens to all of us at some point. What
this part out.
No, leave this part in. I want everybody to know. I mean, I love little Evangeline. She's sort of an interesting character because I don't know why, but she never felt like she quite fit in to these books for me. It's been interesting kind of going through it, because I have not read these books in years, properly read them since the first time. And I always sort of had this question of what is the point of the child?
But yeah, she's a cute little baby.
Yeah, it's a lot of stairs.
She's getting those steps in.
Yeah, she's gonna have calves of steel by the end of this.
By the time she's 12.
So Kelly, I think you need to add some thick calves in your costuming.
I will. I can put some padding underneath my stockings just to really, really bulk out, and then make a point of showing some leg at some point.
She's been climbing stairs all these years, just every day, all the time.
Elevators. Oh crap! My phone just. I need my notes. We can move on to chapter 101. That's when more things
I just have to share one thing from 100. I just love the moment when Ansel totally steals Manon's breakfast. She takes a piece of toast, and then when she's done talking about how they could share the waste, she just grabs her plate and walks away with it. It's well, I guess you're not eating this, so I'm just gonna help myself.
No, I'm always like, it's remarkable how few like fucks Ansel gives. She's like, she
Yeah.
just does anything, and I'm like, it's admirable, but could not be me.
Yeah. She also is like, we could share it instead of being like, what's gonna happen? She's just like, no, I still get some.
Yeah. Also assuming that they'll win the fight altogether. So good confidence in her.
That's true. It's not looking great. In chapter 101, we are now back with Aelin. She's fresh off of closing the word gates and returning home, and starts off mentioning that she is Fae now. Her ears are pointy. She and Rowan and Dorian and Kale return to the larger group, and the phase there sense that her human part is gone, which I thought was interesting because I didn't realize that would change her smell. But these guys have some crazy nostrils, and I would not want to fart in their vicinity. Um, they briefly discuss
Top
what it
concerns.
means. That is Kelly. It is. Um, they briefly discuss what it means for the gods to have been banished. Dorian reflects on his father, and how turns out he was sort of a good guy. Whoops. Um, and Dorian, which I didn't remember from my last reads, but he mentions also that his magic is less intense. I was always very focused on like Aelin barely being able to do fire anymore, but Dorian mentions that he also expended some. Um, and talks about him being jealous of Kale and Irene because of their love. Alid and Aelin have a lovely conversation while they're taking baths, which is both relatable and weird, in my opinion. And Alid asks Aelin, or not asks, says, who you are isn't your magic, which I thought was nice, and tells Aelin that she can kind of decide if she's human or not, like internally in her soul, her heart. They talk about Aelin's fears. Aelin talks about why she didn't give Alid the blood oath. It's because she doesn't want to be bound to Alid. She just likes having her like her. And Alid gives Aelin the ring that protects against the Valg. Then Borte arrives while they're still in the bath. Girls, get some towels. They and then at the very end of the chapter, the Southern Continent gang is kind of discussing the snow because they are from the Southern Continent. Um, so they're cold as shit. Any thoughts on these chapters? Go. On this
I
chapter.
thought this was the most interesting chapter of the set. Here, there's like so many insights into the characters. Like Rowan, he does not let go of Aelin for 1 second once she has come back. He's like, oh my god, I thought you were going to die and you didn't, and I'm never letting you out of my sight again. And like through the rest of the book, he's constantly thinking about her, always wondering where she is, what she's doing, is she okay? And that speaks a lot to like how much he needs her, how attached he is to her. And the other thing I thought was really interesting was Aelin had a moment when she was thinking about how she had glimpsed other worlds, but knew that she was unable to explore them, and suddenly she felt like this world was a cage. And it signifies a little bit of a relationship to Maeve, who might have felt similarly when she discovered that power, except she like let it consume her and take her over. But Aelin was like, wait a second, that's absolutely ridiculous. And she just shakes it off and she never thinks about it again. But it's like for a split second, she kind of became a god herself with that ability. And if you think about the world itself being a cage, like who else could feel like that except a god? But because she keeps her human part of her, she's able to like shake it off and be like, that's ridiculous. Like this world is enough, clearly. Terrasin is enough, and that's all that she wants in the end. She doesn't want to become like a world conqueror.
That's a good point. I don't think I ever thought of that. I feel like there's so much going on that's jam packed in these last chapters that, yeah, it's almost like you have to read each one super slowly and not skim it like I did before this podcast. Um,
Yeah, I feel that. I had not thought of that either, but it is interesting. It makes me kind of. I had kind of forgotten when I was reviewing the chapters, like how Sergio Mas had like done all of these like kind of POV switches like in a single chapter, and it becomes like really, really dense. But I did, I enjoyed all of these characters just getting to kind of chat with each other. I'm partially convinced this is the chapter that proved they all should have been at least a little bit gay, but
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I mean, Dorian is very clearly attracted to Kale. We all
Oh
know
my God.
this.
Yes.
I
The
think it's
problem is
I
that
think it's
Kale is, like,
later.
too straight, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dale
Ugh.
is aggressively straight. It's kind of frustrating. At some point, I think it's a later chapter. We'll get to it later. There's like a line from like Dorian's POV that I'm like, oh come on. When we get to it later, I'll point it out.
But he does say that he likely would have married Irene if he'd had the chance, which I thought was kind of weird. But then I was like,
He's
what if it was a
basically
three-person situation?
he means he would marry Kale if he had the chance. That's what he
Yeah.
means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's and I did like Aelin and Elid's like conversation that they were having. I feel like Elid kind of is like very grounding for Aelin because she's just like a normie basically.
Yeah. Well, Lee's like one of the only like non-magical beings like
Mhm.
in the book. So there's something I think just very she almost like I think that's why a lot of people like Elite is you're like, oh, that could be me because I don't have weird
Mhm.
fire powers, but I could be her. And so I think, that's the thing that I always loved about her is that she really does hold her own amongst all of these like kind of wildly inhuman characters.
Yeah.
I mean, she's just
One
the
of the
little
most
lead.
wildly inhuman, especially Lorcan.
Yeah, he's up there.
But
I
she
think we
never
should bring
feels
back
insecure
communal
next.
baths.
We should. Like Roman baths, big Roman baths.
No.
Mm.
Maybe that's how we solve
If
the
you guys
world's
are in Spain, you
problems.
can find one. With chapter 102, we move back to. Do I have something on my forehead? Yes, I do. In chapter 102, we move back to Orinth, where we find out that, as kind of expected, Murtaugh died because he went to the front. Lysandra is super pissed because the other lords are just not doing shit. Um, Adian is very upset that he wasn't there to help, and so they comfort each other, and things get a little spicy in the corridor.
Mhm.
Um, I have taken pictures of Aaron and Hannah getting a little spicy against a wall, and I did possibly scar a very young child
My
who
God.
saw it.
Carolyn.
So I
Oh
think I
my.
exposed that young child to just a lot of questions because Hannah was a woman dressed as a man, and like, who knows? Who knows what that little boy thought? But fun fact, that's what this was based on. But
Amazing.
despite getting a little bit spicy, they agree they'll only have sex if they live through the day. Which I'm kind of like, you guys just do it because what if you die? Like, what are you? Hello. And then we go into Manon, Darrow, Adian, Rolf, Ansel, and all the other lords are discussing the plans for the following day, sort of the status of everything that they have. And they say they have some food, but basically they only have a few days left with the weapons that they have because they're running low on fire lances and all the like heavy machinery. Um, what do you think? Do you think they should have had sex?
No.
The important questions.
No.
It sounds like it
I
was
don't
like something
understand.
to live for. Like
Mm,
something to keep them going, to keep them fighting harder.
I
I
think they
just
should have
don't
just
like
done it.
Adian.
That's true, but
I
like
just don't like him and I don't think he deserves her. Um
He doesn't.
and I don't know. I just get this is like a Sarah J. Maas thing where she keeps having like her couples like making out in the middle of like battle and it kind of weirds me out a little bit. Like I can't relate.
they aren't in a tent, so that makes me be like, you
But
could go into one of the bedrooms. Like
there's stone
nobody's
walls here.
blowing
It's
someone in
okay.
a tent here.
Okay. Okay, Carolyn. I'm glad we know your standards. But
If there's stone walls, like it's not as
yeah.
weird. Like in Game of Thrones, I thought it made sense that Arya was like, I should probably like lose my virginity before I maybe die tomorrow. Like
Still
that makes
can't
sense.
relate, but okay. You know what? I've never
Fine.
been in that situation, so I won't judge too hard.
I mean, I
I
haven't
think
either,
it's
so
more,
maybe I also would say no. Maybe I'd be like, I need to focus. But if
yeah.
never mind.
I mean, this
I
chapter is
can't
like
relate.
6 pages, and it like starts with I mean, what a ride it takes us on. It starts with like a vigil, It's supposed to be like super sad. And then they're making out in the hallway. And then we're back to talking about war. And I'm
It does. A lot of these chapters gave me whiplash. Like I was
Maybe
just
it's
like,
an
where?
attempt to balance it all, like trying to not have all the blood and gore just in your face constantly, like a little bit of a reprieve, but it does feel a little whiplashy.
Yeah, there's just a lot happening, a whole lot. And as we continue, a whole lot does happen because we're on to, there we go, chapter 103, where we are now back with Aelin. And there's just a terrible storm that's happening. They are trying to discuss how are they going to get there. Aelin's like, I will use all of the power that I have to melt snow. And Rowan's like, you would, but please don't. Um, as he reflects on everything that Aelin has given to the cause, about how like her scars are gone, now she no longer has a mortal body. Little sad stuff. And then exciting. The Lord of the North shows up and the little folk are there and they're going to guide them home, which is just super cute. And then the Lord of the North speaks, which is, I forgot that that happened and was like, the fuck? Um, Kind of like vocal projection, or not vocal, like mental projection, I'm guessing. Um, and then there's a dryad that speaks, which I thought was really cute because they say a better world even for us, which is just like a reminder what they're all fighting for, and that like the little folk, are in on that. They know. And then a little plot drop is that Aelin is going through some of the books that Kale and Irene brought from the southern continent. She specifies that she's looking for something, but they don't say what it is. And then Rowan is like, "Can I for once know one of your plans?" And helps her out with this plan that we don't know what it is. Um, yeah, what do you guys think? Did you like the Lord of the North when he showed up and the little folk?
I love the little folk. They're so cool. I want to see that like in a TV show or a movie because I bet they look so cute and tiny.
Mm-hmm. Kelly's a
hot
hater.
take. Okay, it's not that I'm a hater. I like the little folk as a concept. Lord of the North, cool. I have never, and I remember this from the first time I read the books. I don't understand why they're in the book. What do they actually
For
accomplish? Like,
funsies.
are they?
Oopsies.
It's just it
I
feels
think it's
weird.
about
Like
like
they're.
I think it's about that it's sort of almost like the will of Terrasen embodified, personified in them, because they're the ones who are like they leave her the little presents and they help her get away from Maeve, and I feel like it's kind of like a reminder of some of that, like that Terrasen is there for her, and then also it's because it's sort of, I guess, when they're originally helping her is like foreshadowing maybe that she's the actual queen of the Fae because Maeve is a false queen. So Aelin is technically their queen, and they kind of know that, I think. I just think it's also there for funsies because it's cute. I sometimes don't think,
I
like, I
agree.
try not to read too much into Sarah J. Maas. I think it's just there for
No,
funsies.
no, you will
They're
spiral
cool.
downward very quickly. I agree. I can accept the whole they're the spirit of Terrace thing. I think what bothered me about them like the first time is like I feel like they maybe come up like once or twice in earlier books, but they're like
It's
not.
mostly in this book, and then also in Empire of Storms.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
They all briefly go into Terrasen, and then they like leave her a crown or something. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like when she first entered Terrasen, they kind of like welcome her with like little things.
Okay. Well, I'll accept it, but I prefer a stronger through line. But you know what? Do they ever? Are they? Do they describe them somewhere,
No, and that did confuse me
or
when
do we
suddenly
just?
there's a dryad, because I was like, we've never really heard what they look like, and then all of a sudden
Yeah,
it's
it's just there.
like, yeah, like, oh, a
I just kind of
dryad.
picture it as like Narnia creatures, like the leftover
Mm,
wildest fae that exist in the world,
mm,
like dryads and I don't know, tiny satyrs, maybe little
that makes
gnomes.
sense. I feel like every time I picture them, I was trying to think, what's the? Is it? Oh gosh, what's the Ghibli movie where you got the little like kind of weird like oh god, I'm gonna have to look it up.
I haven't seen a single Ghibli movie,
Hang
so
on,
I
it
can't
might be
imagine.
Princess Mononoke. You keep going. I'll find it.
Well, we can move on while Kelly searches to chapter 104, where we return to Orinth, because there's a lot of back and forth. And Morath is sort of like playing with them like a cat plays with a mouse, where they're kind of not going at their full pace. And Adian guesses that it's because Erewhon wants full surrender. He doesn't just want to beat them like by force, he wants to beat them mentally as well. Um, Adian and Lysandra are fucking now. It is referenced, so update on that. Um,
Thank you.
Wait, I thought they still weren't. Did I misread that?
no, they like I did
We get a
skim it.
page
No,
group.
they kind of like imply that they're doing it.
By the way, I found it. They're called the Kodama. They're from Princess Mononoke. Look them up. I don't know if it'll show up on my camera. Wait, it's these guys.
Oh,
It's
Yeah.
that's also what I pictured, so that's why suddenly there was a
weird
dryad and I
little
was like,
like
"Hold up."
marshmallow rocks. I don't know what they are exactly, but that's what I imagine. Way less excited than Narnian creatures, but
I
Could be
can't
either
find
one.
it, but I'm pretty sure it's implied that they are now doing it.
I thought there
It's
was
on.
still like making out in hallways.
Oh, you're maybe they say sometimes more, some like, and that just means like not
Like
full sex.
a little bit of
A little
handsiness
touch.
maybe.
an
um,
important
they
distinction,
use
Carolyn.
what?
An important distinction, Carol.
Yes, that's
It matters to the
you know,
plot.
it does. It does clearly. She keeps writing about it. Um, they use the last fire lance, so everything is looking bleak, and they're all pretty much like, "We're dying tomorrow." And then we see the impact of Evangeline, and finally why she's important in these books is that Evangeline tells Darrow how much she wanted Caravere, however we're pronouncing that, to be her home, and she saw it, and she was just hoping that that's what would happen, and that she says that Aylin's plan was for Terrason to be a place where people can kind of like be who they are, and where the people who have hurt them in the past won't be, which is just sad for like a 10-year-old to have to think about that. Um, so she would like, not Aelin, Evangeline would like to fight until the end and not give up because of all of that. And so then Darrow is like, wow, I'm such a dick. That's not written in there, but it's the subtext. Um,
Carolyn's insertion.
and her words clearly have touched him, and he goes into like the cafeteria. I picture it looking like the Great Hall. And
Cafeteria.
he returns the sword of Orinth to Adian as like a gesture of I'm a dumbass. um Darrow also finally formally recognizes Lysandra as the Lady of Caravere, and then of all things he names Evangeline as his heir because he doesn't have any. And then right at the end of the chapter, Manon reflects on everything and wishes that she had seen the wastes one last time before clearly her inevitable death. Um, so yeah, what do you think, Evangeline? Kelly, that's you.
I know. Thank you. Um, First up, this chapter. Okay, who's seen Les Mis, the musical? Familiar
Yes.
with it? Okay, this chapter is very much. What's that one song like? Where they're like all drinking, drink with me, like before they're all about to like die, but it's kind of hopeful, and
Oh yeah.
that's
I
what
don't
this
remember.
chapter feels like. It's like everybody coming together and learning to be good people right before they die. So it's a little bit depressing.
Is Evangeline Gavroche?
I don't know, maybe. He lives though.
They're
So,
like
I mean, spoiler alert for Les Mis.
I haven't seen Les Mis. I do
I'm
need to.
sorry, Carolyn.
Very
not that
timely. I need to see
Carolyn, if you haven't seen it by now,
It's no, it's spoilers are allowed. The movie came out a million years ago. The book came out a bajillion years ago, and the play's been on for quite a few centuries. So,
anyway,
um,
it's not exactly the point. Um, always Evangeline ages about 10 years in this scene. I think that's the other thing about Evangeline, and I guess like it kind of makes sense. I sometimes get stuck in like the thought loop of like comparing like a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, how old is she? Evangeline to like kind of like what a child Aelin might have been like, and how like in some ways they face similar hardships, but they get there differently. like, I mean, Evangeline's kind of interesting because I think the only way that a child kind of worked in the book was because of the fact that she has like really known hardship her entire life, so she is slightly older. You couldn't just
Mhm.
put like an innocent, a child who's acting like an 11-year-old,
Yeah,
in this
no, I'm
book.
thinking of, like, one of my
It would
nieces.
not
This
work.
would not be a good
Yeah,
time.
no. So so that's why she's kind of that's why I think that's one of the reasons why I'm like, why exactly a child? And then I guess like, the point is kind of for this is that, I think she's supposed to be this idea of like hope and innocence and,
Mhm.
even though she has to lack
Sure.
a certain amount of innocence to kind of pull it off, but it's all I always sort of say I feel like this particular passage and her talking about like, what Terrason was meant to be and like the dream for Terrason is almost like it feels more like it's for the reader at this point than it is for like the actual plot because ultimately, I mean, she's just telling it to just Darrow and it doesn't
Mhm.
have really any kind of immediate consequence like on the story. So I
Well, he
think it's
does
really
make his
just meant
little
to
speech thingies. I think it was the
He
final
does.
straw, but the positive version of the final straw, whatever that saying
True.
is.
I mean, we love to see growth, especially among, old men. But
Mhm.
you know, I think everybody kind of remembers that passage like when you read it because it is sort of like I think it's that first time that you really kind of people have been talking about like the better world, but it's the first time you really get that description of like what that could look like. Um,
And from one of, like, the younger generation who will be, like, the next generation, as we'll
yeah.
see in our movie.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like it was interesting kind of rereading it like now having sort of thought about Evangeline, explored her a little bit, like what her life might be like 10 years later and I don't want to give spoilers for the movie, but it actually kind of made me a little bit depressed
Because
because I was
reality
like,
happens when you're 20.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a pretty dream. And I think it also just kind of made me sad to read something like that, like, obviously in the world we're existing in today.
Mm, that hits
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, this book is a lot. It hits harder in many different ways right now.
Hmm.
It's like good and bad. Probably why I keep shedding tears even though I'm just skimming. I mean, I'm reading it. Hard to prep, okay? Um, so now for once this chapter continues with the same group that we're with. 105 is in the morning. Morath is like, haha, fuck you. And they unleash their full power. And as I wrote in my notes, everything is fucked. Um, Adian and Lysandra say that they love each other and will find each other in the next life, which I'm not sure if she stole from her own writing of Nesta and Cassian, spoiler alert, or she wrote
Heroine.
for, like, who knows? She stole from herself. Because they
It's a
they
She
say
says
that.
that all the
thing.
time. She does that
Yeah,
all
I
the time. She
know.
has whole lines that are like famous that she uses across all three series. Are you kidding me? How many times
But
have we read "You do not yield"
this
in
one
books?
really, I was like, you couldn't even have tried, like, whatever.
No,
Um,
but we exist in the multiverse where they all have the same like phrases and idioms. So
it's true.
What would you say
Uh,
to someone before going into battle?
I would not say I'll find you in the next life because I don't think I believe that that exists.
What would you say though?
Probably something sarcastic because I am unable to feel emotions. Or I just be like crying. I wouldn't be in the battle, is the thing. I would have been one of the people who's too scared and I'd be one of the women in the keep in Helm's Deep who's just sitting there crying because they don't know how to fight. That is the truth, no matter how much I would like to pretend it's not.
uh, I'd be like, well, here goes nothing.
I like that. That's a good quip.
I'd probably be like, where's Neville? Because I just want to see my cat one last time.
Oh.
Like, push my husband out of the way, be like, I need to give Neville a kiss.
Yeah, one more pause with your summary, Carolyn. I like that you started this with Morath being like, well, fuck you. And I was like, I think they probably put that like on their banners, like as they're going into war. It's just like the Morath flag, and at the bottom it just says, well, fuck you. And then they
There's
keep going.
slogan.
That's their war cry.
Oop, I lost where
Anyway.
I am. Oh, and then while they're like, we fucked, suddenly they hear a horn and they're like, that doesn't sound like a Morath horn because as we know, horns have evil and good sounds. We've all seen the movies, they do. It's a fact. And then they're like, wait, there's people coming. And then Aelin shows up and she's riding the Lord of the North like a badass bitch. And finally, everybody's together and we don't have to flip as many chapters. They're at least in the same location. We're still going to flip chapters.
Yeah, flipping through POVs in like every paragraph.
Kind of like, where am I?
Yeah. I was like, oh God, this is why, like, when I reach the end of a contemporary fantasy book, I'm just like, I need to set aside 2 hours to just finish it because otherwise, like, you just kind of need to keep going or you have to then jump back into like 3,000 different POVs.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of chaos.
Yeah, especially like battle scenes. I'm like, what's happening? We can just keep going into chapter 106. It's another short one, and it sort of describes how they showed up at the right time. The little folk helped rush them through Orinth, so we find out that it took 6 days. And they were just going ham and throwing all their random shit to the side that they didn't need to carry. And there's a little part where just Aelin is taking it all in. She's pleased to see that Manon kept her vow and that all the Kraken witches are there. And then, as I wrote in my notes, they charge epically.
Epic.
Because I feel like I
Maybe
can see
Gandalf.
it, and as it continues in my head, it's basically when they come over the hill in Helm's Deep, and
Yes, it is exactly that.
yeah, definitely stolen from that visual, but I'm not mad about it. It helped me visualize it.
I can see that. Just writing down majestically.
Yeah.
on a
She's
giant
like
deer.
Gandalf. Things are glowing.
How big do we think that deer is?
Like,
I thought it was like
fucking huge.
really big.
Like, like, do you think Aelin's legs are just like practically out to the side? Because
I imagine him tall, but like maybe like whatever the thick are Budweiser horses the ones that are like thick.
Clydesdales?
Clydesdales,
Yes,
yeah.
Yeah.
Budweiser horses. Hello, that's what they're called. That's kind of
Okay.
I imagine that width, but like taller and with skinnier legs, and then like his horns are really big.
I could see that, yeah.
Snowplow.
Yes, a snowplow. I do wonder, like, how did she get up on that guy?
I imagine he like dipped his head down in like a bow and she just kind of climbed up his neck, maybe.
Well, she had a bunch of guys with her. Just kind of.
Lorcan probably can just like whoop.
Just picks her up by the back of her neck and pops her down.
real dignified. That's why they didn't put that scene in the book.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't
It
need
would
to know
never
how
wait.
she got up there. She just got up there.
What a waste.
At least she's
Lost
like
opportunity.
graceful. Like if I was trying to get on it, it would be a mess. And that's why I'd be in the keep and not fighting. Then we're on to chapter 107. We're kind of in Rowan's POV. He's fighting, and then he notices that Alien and Gabriel is what my autocorrect says. Aelin and Gabriel are not in sight. They have this like cute little moment where he's thinking like, oh, like the cadre's all back together, but just kidding, we're not the cadre anymore. We're brothers of Terrasin. And it was like some cute manly love, you know? Then we're at Adian is at the western gate. He's trying to hold it still as Aelin's army is like rushing to come help. Dorian is like, I hate this shit. This is my first ever fight. I'm scared. Um, we haven't done a podcast together, Kelly. You don't know that I just have ridiculous recaps.
Oh, I enjoy it. I think you should like just type them up.
They're
Put them
typed
out
up.
there for the people.
And then Dorian says that he's doing it for Otterlin, and in quotes, what had been done to it and what it might become, which is another like look to the future that's kind of hopeful for us. He very dagger to the heart references that he can see Manon, but he oddly doesn't see any of the other 13. And I'm like, thanks for bringing that up again. Aelin is about to get smashed by an evil wyvern, but another one who has surprisingly green eyes saves her. And she's like, yeah, Lysandra, nice to see you. And then Lysandra becomes a snow leopard, and then they fight together. Rowan is, like you mentioned before, Becca, he's like, I need to be with my lady. And he's trying to get back to her. Where is she? And then he watches Lysandra and Aelin
Oh, we've come so far, Carolyn.
typically flip up the siege tower is the way I described it. And he sees her turning it away from Orinth, just like she did at Skulls Bay with Sam, is like a note that Rowan has in his head, which I just think is like one, cute that he brings up Sam, two, cute that he like remembers this important part in her life. Like he's just such a good boy.
He
Um
is. He's such a good boy.
yeah. And then Ansel is on the second tower, and this is what I imagine when Legolas takes down that whole Oliphant
Yeah.
in Return of the King. And then she and Aelin kind of like get the towers aimed at each other, and then they both hit their swords, and then they boom each other, which is another thing that I can picture now in my mind. And then pretty cool stuff. Then we quick cut to Nesrin and the Rooks, and Nesrin is like, "Oh, LOL, there's more of the Morath army coming. They were just hiding, waiting for us." And then we end the chapter with Adian still at the gate, trying to keep it from being, messed up. And then his father is there, and he arrives to help Adian. What do you guys think of all the very visually? Did you see it in your head, all of the things in this chapter? Because this, I feel like, is one of the most visual chapters in my brain. No?
I was trying to get my brain to like hone in on one scene at a time. I definitely can picture
Not
yeah,
all over.
all over. I can envision Adian and Gabriel together and just like them finally acknowledging each other as what they are to each other, and Adian has taken his head out of his ass finally, and it's like, yeah, you're
Just
my
about
father and
perfect.
you're pretty
He still has
cool.
like 3/4 of his head up his ass for like some other stuff.
Oh,
He's got like one eye
yeah,
out.
he does. He pulled it out a little bit.
Oh, at least he can breathe now.
Yeah, just enough to be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I have a father before, you know.
No spoilers. We're not there
No
yet.
spoilers, we haven't gone through that chapter.
We haven't gotten Carolyn's recap yet. I want to see how she describes it. Yeah. I did find that line though, best line in the whole chapter. So Dorian kept fighting, his brother in soul and in arms beside him.
Yeah.
Just kiss him
Yeah.
already, you
Oh my
Just
coward.
God.
make out.
Soulmates.
God. That's the only kind of battle makeout I would accept.
That's, oh my god, that would be
That-
amazing. But
Just in the
also, like,
middle of everything.
Dorian would
Slow-mo.
run at Kale, and Kale would be like, whoa, 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 whoa. And Irene
What's
would
that
probably
thing?
just let it happen.
Oh yeah,
Probably.
Irene would be like, "Oh, let me
chill.
keep the battle away from you so you can have this moment with each
Yeah.
other."
Yeah,
Irene is an ally.
exactly.
What, Carol? When you said Kale, would be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was thinking about like that. What's that? Oh God, what's that movie? Is it like Madagascar, where they end up like on the island and like
Yes, I think so.
like Alex the lion like starts running towards Marty the zebra. He's gonna like attack him. Never
Oh,
mind.
yeah.
Look it up later. That would be great. All of my references.
I
It's fine.
haven't seen
It's great in my
Madagascar in
head.
a long time.
Oh, that should
But
make
I
it
will.
more.
Ooh.
You've
It's
never
okay.
seen it?
Never seen Les Mis.
Problem with the
We're
parody
both
of it.
disappointments.
I need
What do
the
you guys think
podcast buddies.
about how like, does it make it less like I don't know what I'm saying. Is Murtaugh's death less sad or also more sad because he couldn't take down the siege tower and or help at all, and then Ansel just fucking takes one on her own, and Aelin and Lysandra take one? No, yes.
I mean, he knew that it wasn't really going to go well. He mostly just did it to be like, "Hey, I'm
Morale.
here, to rally the rest of the soldiers," which it sounds like he did. It did kind of seem a little bit, oh, I don't want to use the word pathetic. What's a better word? Um
Thesaurus.com.
I mean, he
You know
seems
what?
not the
He's old.
strongest and yeah, he's old.
Yeah,
He's
he's
old.
old.
He's old.
He's old. If I
That's
was that age,
true.
I would also. At this age, I'm not taking out a siege tower. Okay.
Would you be in the keep with me crying in the corner?
100%. Absolutely not. I will not survive war. I know this about myself. I'm self-aware. I'm okay with that.
I would
Nothing wrong with
probably, I guess, my best self, which I can't say would arise during this, would be helping the healers because
Mm.
I would be able to like clean things. Like I couldn't see the grossness because I'd throw up and nobody wants that. when I could probably like